One of my favorite memorials in Washington, D.C. is the FDR Memorial. Now, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was our 32nd president. And before he'd passed away, he had mentioned to one of his colleagues that if they were to build a memorial to him, he didn't want anything larger than the size of his desk. And he would like it on the grounds of the National Archives. So, in 1965, we dedicated a memorial to him, and it is at the corner of 9th and Pennsylvania at the corner of the National Archives. So, fast forward, 1997, we're dedicating a new memorial to FDR, and it sits on 7.5 acres. So it is quite a large memorial. Now, the memorial is divided up into 4 different outdoor rooms. Now, each room is representative of each term he served in office. So yes, I said that right, 4 terms. He was elected 4 times. Now, we all know that a president cannot be elected 4 times. Now, we didn't have that rule until after FDR's presidency. But before it, it was just kind of one of those unspoken things. George Washington, our first president, who was elected unanimously for the first term and for the second term. And then they wanted him to run for the 3rd term. And then George is like, nope, because if I run again, it's no better than me being like a king, and that's exactly what we just got away from. So he kind of set an unspoken precedence for that. So why was FDR elected 4 times? Well, you have to understand what our country was going through at that time. So, the stock market crashed in 1929, and FDR was elected in 1933. So we were in the midst of the Great Depression. And so, we had a lot of people out of work and a lot of bad things going on in our country. And then we get thrown into World War II. And I just think with the nature of what was happening, people maybe felt more comfortable keeping the same guy in office. Who knows what the real reason is, but I'm glad he was elected 4 times because I think he did a lot of really good things for our country. So each room, like I said, is divided into 4 rooms. However, afterwards, they built another room, and they call it the Prologue Room. And the reason that they built that room is because the American Disabilities Association, they were quite upset that the memorial did not depict FDR in a wheelchair with his disability. Now, when I think he was 36, is when he was struck with polio, so he couldn't walk. He could use braces, and you will see pictures of him standing, and that's because he has men on both sides of him help holding him up, and he does have his braces that he's holding on to, or he's holding onto the podium or whatever it is. Now, he didn't want the American public to know that he was in a wheelchair because he felt like that would make him seem weak, and he is the president of the United States, and he needs to set an example of being a strong president. So how is it possible that the American public didn't know that he was in a wheelchair? Very simple. He asked the press not to ever photograph him when he was in the wheelchair, and they obliged. Hard to believe, I know, because that certainly wouldn't happen today, would it? And people, he wasn't on TV, so people didn't get to see him that often. They could hear him on the radio, or they would see pictures in the newspaper, but we didn't have television or computers or internet. So it was a little bit easier to disguise it. So on that note, what do you think? Do you think that was a good thing to depict him in a wheelchair? Because they added a sculpture of him in the wheelchair in the Prologue Room. But do you think that was a good thing? Or should we have just gone with what his wishes were? I don't know. I think everybody has a different opinion about that. But anyway, so after we leave the Prologue Room, we're going to go into the first room. And if you look down as you enter into each room, you'll see what term it was. It'll say what years it was. First term in 1933, and then how long it lasted. And in that room, there's a big bas relief of the funeral procession. And the first term is when he got busy and got to work right away. He started the New Deal program against a lot of wishes of the opposite party. that nobody wanted this. They didn't think it was, going to work, but it did. He's had a lot of programs in the New Deal. He had the CCC, he had the WPA, he had all these programs to get people up off and working. And, they were paying them to do all these good things for our country, like helping restore roads or build roads. They were building campsites and hiking trails in the national forests and things like that. So it was a good thing. And a lot of our programs came out of that New Deal program that we still use today, like Social Security. I think everybody agrees they like having their Social Security when they retire. We had FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance for the banks, so that our money would be insured in the banks. I think it's up to $200,000. Unemployment insurance. So a lot of good programs came out of this. So anyway, we'll go into the next room, the second room. And I like this room. This room has got sculptures kind of indicating what was going on in the country at that time. You'll have an old farm couple sitting in a chair, and the woman standing behind him. You have men in a food line with their heads bent down, looking very downtrodden. The churches would come together to feed the hungry, which they still do today. We have food pantries today that are really important right now during this pandemic when nobody has any money. People have lost so many jobs. But then the other sculpture is of a man listening to the radio, and he is listening to one of the fireside chats. Now, this is one of FDR's way to encourage the American people. So everybody would sit around their radio in their living rooms and listen to the president speak. And it was very positive and very upbeat. He would talk about, these are the things that we've got going on, and these are the things that are working, and we're getting our country back on track. And so it was a really good thing for the American people. Now, another theme that goes in this memorial is water. So when we start out, there's like a still water, and then as we come into, it gets a little rougher each time, and then we get into the war, and it gets really wild at the war, and then at the end it's real peaceful and calm after he dies. But the third room is the room where you'll see the statue, the very large statue of FDR with his dog Fala, and like the picture that's behind me. This room also has big stones scattered around, and on it you'll see letters saying I on one stone, hate on another stone, war, and it's all chaotic. And so it's a neat room too. So then we'll go into the fourth room, and in the fourth room the water gets still. You'll see the funeral procession on a big bas relief, but here you'll also see a statue of Eleanor Roosevelt. Now, Eleanor was one of the most active first ladies. She started something that first ladies hadn't done. She was very involved and very active, especially in civil rights and humanitarian causes. Now, she was constantly urging her husband to do this and do that and do that. So she was constantly in his ear, and he'd be like, Eleanor, we're not quite ready for that yet. The country's not ready for that yet. But she would have liked to have seen a lot more happen at the time. She was also the first delegate to the United Nations. So I think, they may not have had the most perfect marriage, but I think they were true soulmates. I think that they really had a lot of respect for each other as partners. Now, another feature in the memorial is, as you're walking through each room, you'll see a lot of quotes on the wall. And of course, my favorite quote is, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Now, this memorial sits on the tidal basin. It's sandwiched between the very new Martin Luther King Memorial, which was dedicated in 2011, and then the Thomas Jefferson Memorial. So I hope you get a chance to actually go to Washington, D.C. and see this in person. I know you will enjoy it. And I hope you learned a fact or two. And I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you.